Summer 1989. On a quiet summer night in 1989, Dylan wakes up after hearing a sobbing sound. He stays on the bed for a while, staring at the ceiling fan. Then he gets down on his bed and goes out. He chases the sobbing sound. The sobbing gets intense near the kitchen. He sees a woman who is standing in front of the kitchen sink. The kitchen is dark, only a candle is lit there. He stops at the threshold of the kitchen. The candle starts flickering. As she turns back, the candle blows out. Fall 1989. Dylan is sitting on the bench outside the house. They shifted, he and his father. He listens to the radio, wearing headphones. He is watching his father and the driver of the cargo van taking out the cartons from the van. After a while, Dylan and his father, Michael, go in. Dylan is observing the interior. He settles down his stuff and puts his inhaler in the drawer of the table that is in the living room so he can use it when he needs to. Now they both are unpacking the cartons. Dylan is arranging the kitchen stuff. He hears the sound of playing children from the kitchen window. He peeps through the window and sighs. Then he goes to his room. In the evening, Dylan is lying down on the sofa, his head in his father's lap, and he is listening to the story that his father narrates to him. It is a fairy tale of Pinocchio and a fairy, and the story revolves around the fulfillment of Pinocchio's wish by the fairy. He smiles while listening to the story. Later in the evening, he is sitting on his bed. Then he gets up and takes out his robot toy from the drawer and places it on the shelf. He hears a distorted whispering from the walk-in closet. He goes in and sees a huge thing covered with a cloth. He pulls out the cloth with hesitation. It is a huge standing mirror that is stained. Then, he places a chair near the shelves to reach the top shelf. He stands on the chair and sees a thing wrapped in Hessian cloth. He takes it down and blows away the dirt from its top. He unwraps it. It looks like a magic book with an encircled star sign on the cover page, which is associated with black magic. He gets excited to explore it, as he also wants to get a fairy who can fulfill his wish, as the fairy did in Pinocchio's tale. He opens the book and sees the title, Book of Shadows. He turns the pages, one after another. He stops at the page where the title is, Wish of Desire. He breathes heavily and smiles. Michael calls his name. He furiously closes the book and hides everything under the bottom shelf. Then, he goes out and puts the chair in the closet. In haste, he puts it in between the doorstep. He tries to close the door, but the door creaks back open. His father gets in and asks him if he is all right. He tells him with his hand movements that it was just the bang of the door. Michael asks him to come for food. Dylan feels sad, as he cannot reply to his father, because he is dumb. His father assures him that he is perfect the way he is. He should not think about the things that he does not have, and should think about the things that he has. Dylan smiles at this. His father goes out. Dylan puts his head on the doorframe and sighs. At the dinner table, Dylan is just swirling the chopsticks frantically in the food. His father tells him that his grandparents will arrive soon for the holiday. Dylan is still scraping the chopstick. His father asks him to try the food. Dylan keeps on scraping. His father asks him if he is all right. Dylan tells him that he is feeling sad at the passing of his paternal grandfather, who used to live in that house. Michael replies that it is unfortunate, but he was quite an old man. After a while, Michael throws a pea at him just to lighten up his mood. Dylan picks a pea from his plate and throws it back. Then, they keep on throwing and laughing. After dinner, Dylan is lying down on the carpet of the living room. He is reading a book and listening to music on the radio. His father is getting ready for work. He works as a DJ for a radio station. He tells him that he has placed his contact page on the fridge and asks him to give him a ring when he needs anything. Michael takes the keys and goes to the main door. In the doorway, he asks him to tune in at around 9:30 as he has a surprise for him. Then he goes out. As he goes out, a sharp clanking and whirring sound comes from the air conditioner. He gets scared. Then, he goes to his room, brings out the book, and starts reading the chapter, Wish of Desire. The chapter opens up the way to acquire his wish. He needs a candle aflame and to place 3 drops of blood into the melting wax at the start of the final hour of the day. He has to face his reflection, chant the charm, and make his wish known. At the stroke of midnight, he has to extinguish the flame, and the jinn will grant him the desire of his heart. But he has to beware of the toll of jinn, as his wish might cost him a soul. The artifacts that he needs are a candle, a clock, and a mirror. After reading it, he thinks for a while whether to do it or not, and smiles. He takes out the mirror from the closet and puts it beside his bed. Then, he goes out and gets a matchbox, a candle, and some safety pins. He puts them on the carpet near the mirror. Then he goes out to take the clock. As he reaches the clock, the time is 9:24. He goes to the radio, and the DJ is talking about the disappearance of a young man of 31 in the locality. He tunes into his father's channel. He hears the voice of his father and smiles. After his introduction, Michael Jacobs plays a song for Dylan. While listening to the song, he puts the remaining food into the fridge. After that, he unpacks the TV. He turns it on, it starts buzzing. Then he goes to the storeroom to bring nails and a hammer to hang the painting in the living room. After hanging the painting, he goes to the drawer and takes out his inhaler. Then, he puts it back on the top of the table. He goes to another carton and takes out his and his father's picture. He places it on the table. At 11 o'clock, as the final hour starts, he lights up the candle, pricks his finger with the safety pin, and puts the blood into the melting wax. After that, he takes the candle near the mirror, faces the mirror, and starts the charm with hand gestures. As he finishes the charm, nothing happens. He feels sad, picks up the book, throws it on the bottom shelf, and closes the door of the closet. He goes out. The candle is still lit. Suddenly, it starts flickering. Time flies back to where Dylan follows the sobbing sound coming from the kitchen. He stops at the doorstep and sees the woman's back. The woman stops sobbing and takes out a box from her front and places it on the countertop by her side. She opens it. Time flies again to the present. Dylan is seeing a scar on his chest in the mirror of his father's washroom. After a while, he is taking a shower. The candle is still lit. The wind is whistling. Then, a distorted breathing sound comes from the closet. Then from the holes in the closet's door, black smoke comes out. The smoke travels all around the house to find Dylan. After taking the shower, he goes out into the living room and turns off the TV. While doing dishes in the open kitchen, he sees that the TV is on again. He goes to the TV to turn it off. As he turns it off, he sees a shadow on the blank screen that is reflected from behind. He gets frightened and breathes heavily. He tries to find his inhaler. While looking for it, he hears the sound of his robot toy. He goes to it and turns it off. As he turns it off, he hears intense music coming from the radio. He runs to the fridge and takes out his father's contact number. He goes to the phone. Suddenly, the lights start flickering and the dial of the radio starts turning. The clock is ticking and Dylan is wheezing. He follows the crackling sound and sees a huge jinn near the radio. He runs back to his father's room and closes the door. Then, he gets into the washroom and tries to open the window to get out of the house. In the meanwhile, the jinn turns into smoke again and gathers around the local newspaper over the picture of a young man, the victim of a violent attack, whose story is published in the paper. The smoke enters the picture, and the jinn appears in the form of that young man. Dylan is still trying to open the window. Suddenly, the doorknob clatters and the door is unlocked. Dylan runs to the door and pushes it back with full force. The jinn gets his hand in between the door and the doorframe and tries to reach Dylan. Meanwhile, Dylan gets the scissors from the bottom cabinet and clinks them in the back of Jinn's hand. The jinn starts screaming. The black wax like blood spurts out, and the hand goes out. Dylan slams the door and locks it again. At 11:30, he hears the footsteps near the door again. The jinn tries to open the door, then goes to the kitchen and turns on the gas. After a while, Dylan feels suffocated. As the gas enters the washroom from the exhauster, he starts coughing intensely. Then the door starts pounding again, and suddenly bangs open. The jinn gets in. Dylan bangs him with the lid of the flusher. The jinn falls into the bathing tub. Dylan goes out and inhales. He goes to the main door to go out, but it slams and then gets locked. He goes to the glass window and tries to open it, but fails. He knocks on the glass of the window with the hammer. A crack appears. Suddenly, some invisible force pushes him away from the window. He gets up and goes to the window again. The crack disappears. He draws back the curtains, sits on the carpet, and starts sobbing. He remembers about the contact page. He takes it out of his pocket and dials the number. He sees the smoke coming from the hole in the bathroom door. He runs into the room and hides under the bed. In the meanwhile, the smoke gathers around the picture of his paternal grandfather's picture. After a while, Dylan hears footsteps. He sees the feet of the jinn, who is in the form of his grandfather, walking into the room. The jinn goes out. He presses the button from the cradle. The phone in his hand starts beeping. He throws the phone away. The jinn follows the sound and crushes the phone. He exhales angrily after not finding him. As he is stepping out of Dylan's room, Dylan jumps on him and sprays ant spray in his eyes. He runs away. As he is ditching the jinn, he steps up on the picture frame. That makes a little noise. The jinn starts sniffing, and as soon as he reaches Dylan, a clattering sound from the air conditioner distracts the jinn. He bangs himself into the air conditioner. Dylan runs away to the kitchen. He takes out the knife from the drawer and cautiously goes to his room. He takes the lit candle and gets into the closet. He opens the book again and reads the Wish of Desire chapter again, but fails to understand the happening. Then, he turns the pages and reaches the chapter, the jinn. The chapter reveals that the jinn only grants the wish to the one who survives its presence for the first hour, but it will consume the heart of the one who is not brave enough. The one who fails to survive will damn his soul to the shadow realm for all eternity. The jinn will appear in the form of a spirit and fulfill the desire of the summoner, if he faces the trials courageously. The fulfillment of the desire may lead to unintended consequences. The jinn is not immortal, and susceptible to the laws of man when in the human world, and able to regenerate only upon its return to its realm. It may only be banished if the flame is extinguished after the stroke of midnight. Dylan closes the book and goes out. He faces the mirror and tries to blow out the candle. The flame flickers, but lights again. Then, he sizzles the flame on the edge of the mirror. As he turns back, he sees the candle on the side table, all lit up. He picks it up and again hears the sobbing sound. He follows the sound, holding the candle in one hand and the knife in the other hand. He looks around but finds nobody. Then he goes to the kitchen, puts the candle on the countertop, and takes out the torch from the drawer. He turns it on, facing the ceiling. Then he throws light on the wall. He finds the sobbing woman facing the wall there. He goes near it. It turns its horrible face and screams. Dylan gets scared and runs. The woman is the jinn in the form of his mother. She keeps on following him. Dylan tries to get away from her. He gets in his room and locks the room. As he turns back, he sees her standing there. The torch falls. He steps back, holding the knife. He bangs on the mirror as he is stepping back. She follows the noise and keeps on walking towards him. Dylan picks up the robot toy from the bed, turns it on, and throws it inside the closet. The jinn follows the sound. As she gets in, Dylan closes the door and knocks the knife on the edge of the door to keep it locked. She keeps on screaming in her horrible voice. He runs out, turns on the electric power supply, and attaches the phone to the switchboard. As he starts dialing the phone, a sharp sound of the door banging comes from the room. He gets scared, and the phone drops from his hand. He steps back to the side wall. He stands by the wall, and her hand from the exhausting window from his side gets in. She holds his mouth, and then gets down to his throat to strangle him to death. Dylan chokes, but keeps on struggling to free himself. He bites her hand, and she shrieks. As he tries to get away, she wounds his shoulder by pricking his nails in his flesh. Dylan frees himself and runs to the kitchen. He groans with severe pain and goes to the washroom, holding the knife. He sits by the side of the tub and takes out his inhaler to inhale. He feels dizzy and sees a dream. In his dream, he sees himself on the threshold of the kitchen, trying to walk in, but he keeps on walking in one place. The sobbing woman is in the same place. She puts the box by her side on the countertop and opens it. There is a gun inside it. She takes it out. In the meantime, Dylan tries to prevent her from hurting herself. His lips keep on chanting, "Mom, Mom." She shoots herself in the head and the candle blows out. Dylan opens his eyes. There is a clattering sound coming from the exhaust of the washroom. He stands up, holding the knife, and goes out. He ties the knobs of the washroom door and the door of the room together. He goes to the kitchen near the candle. He sees the ticking clock. The time is some seconds away from ticking midnight. The woman appears under the wall clock and walks towards him. He slips by the side in the opposite direction and hides in the space under the counter. She stops in front of the candle. The clock ticks 12. She turns back and walks towards him. As she stops in front of him, he cuts her calves with the continuous strokes of the knife from the inside of the counter. She falls, and he jumps over her, but she holds his legs. He falls. She gets on top of him and chokes him by holding his neck. Dylan reaches for the near knife on the carpet. He picks it up and stabs her in the stomach, and she shrieks. He runs away from her. He gets into the room and locks the door. He sees her hand from underneath the door. Her hand thuds down. He stares at it for a while. It does not move. He opens the door and sees her lying down. He passes by her quietly. As he reaches the kitchen and looks at the candle, she holds his leg. He frees himself with the force that results in the snap of his leg bone. He crawls towards the candle, and she also follows him, crawling. He gets up by holding the counter and holds the candle in front of him to blow out. She also gets up. Her face changes from a monster's face to his mother's face. She requests him to not let her go again. Suddenly, her monster face appears, and she takes out the knife to attack him. He sees her attacking him. He blows out the candle. The jinn screams as its skin cracks and the wind howls. The jinn disappears, and so does his wound. Dylan goes to the mirror and tries to speak, but cannot hear his voice. Time flies back again, and he is lying on the bed again. He hears the whirring of the ceiling fan and wakes up. He gets down on his bed and follows the sobbing voice. He goes to the kitchen, and the sobbing woman takes out the gun from the box and points it at her head. He calls her mom. She turns back after hearing his voice. He goes to her and asks her if he could stop it then. She nods her head. They hug and start crying. At 6:40 in the morning, Dylan is on his bed, and a book is placed on the carpet. He wakes up and runs to the main door. The door opens and Michael gets in. He hugs him. His father asks him about waking up so early. With his hands movement, he says that he wakes up to welcome him as he loves him so much. Michael replies that he loves him too. He tells him that he will make breakfast for Dylan, and later they will go out to the park to play football. While reaching the threshold of the main door, he asks him if he wants ice cream. The boy gets shocked as the jinn is behind his father's back and strangles Michael until he stops breathing. The price of Dylan's wish is paid. The jinn disappears, and Dylan starts speaking. He cries and sobs, wishing to undo everything. Meanwhile, black smoke travels back to the magic book and goes inside the encircled star that is on the book cover.